Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's tutorial I'll be showing you how to crochet the gorgeous slanting box stitch. This particular stitch has a lot of names. I've heard people call it the box stitch, the diamond stitch, hills on a plain stitch, straight C2C, C2C and rose stitch. There are so many names. So anyway, this stitch is actually quite easy to do, very pretty. It gives a very nice texture to your project, so you can pretty much use this in any project. Actually, you can use it for scarves, shawls, blankets, afghans, anything that you like. And it's really gorgeous, very easy to do, simple pattern. Each row is repetitive, so you don't have to really go back and check the pattern for each row because every row is the same, and it's very easy to do, perfect for beginners to try as well. So if you would like to learn how to crochet the slanting box stitch, then please keep watching. In this tutorial, I'll be using a 4mm size crochet hook and the yarn corresponding to the size of my hook. You may use whichever crochet hook size is available to you. Just make sure that the yarn you use corresponds to your hook size, alright? And now to begin, we're going to start by making a simple slip knot. You may make your slip knot whichever way you prefer. If you are a beginner and if you would like to learn the basics on how to make the slip knot and the foundation chain, I have tutorials on it in the beginner series, so I will leave the links in the description box below. Okay, so now once you've made your slip knot, we are ready to make our foundation chain. So for this particular stitch pattern, you can make your foundation chain however long or however short as you would like. Just make sure that the total number of chains that you make is a multiple of 4. Okay, so just make sure that the total number of chains that you make is a multiple of 4. So to make a foundation chain, the first thing you need to do is make sure your crochet hook is facing up, it's facing you like so. Okay, and then place your hook beneath your yarn, pull your hook down, grabbing your yarn, pull it down and pull it all the way through. So that's chain 1, and you're just going to repeat that. That's chain 2, chain 3, chain 4. Alright, so you may pause the video here, go ahead and make the foundation chain. Just make sure that it is a total, the total number of chains is a multiple of 4. So here, for the sake of the tutorial, I've made a chain of 20. Okay, so once you've made your foundation chain, making sure that the total number of chains is a multiple of 4, now we can move on to row 1. So in row 1, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to work 3 double crochet stitches, okay, into the 4th chain from your hook. Okay, so to count the number of chains from your hook, all you need to do is count backwards from your hook. And when you do that, you're not going to count this loop on your hook. So you're going to start counting from the one below it. So this will be chain 1, then chain 2, chain 3 and chain 4. So this is my 4th chain from the hook, right? So into this 4th chain, we're going to work 3 double crochet stitches. When I say double crochet, I'm using the US term. So in the UK, this will be your treble crochet stitch. Okay, so to make a double crochet, you're going to yarn over once like so. Insert your hook into that 4th chain space, grab your yarn, pull it through. So that's 3 loops on our hook. Yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through the next 2 loops. So that's 1 double crochet. Okay, so we're going to make 2 more double crochet into that same chain space. So I'm going to go back into that space and work another 2 double crochet. Alright, so here into the 4th chain we worked 3 double crochet stitches. So this is how your stitches should look like. Okay, next what you're going to do is skip 3 chains on our foundation chain. So if you see carefully, this is the chain space that we just worked these stitches into, right? So we are going to skip the next 3. So that's 1, 2, 3. okay, and into the fourth chain we are going to work a slip stitch. Okay, so to do a slip stitch, all you need to do is insert your hook directly into that space like so, grab your yarn, pull it through and pull it through again. Okay, so we skipped 3 chains and worked a slip stitch into the fourth chain. Now we are going to chain 3, right, and then we are going to go back into that same space here where we slip stitched, and we are going to work 3 double crochet stitches. Okay, so I hope that's making sense. So after we chain 3, we are going to go back into the same space where we slip stitch, so this space right here, and we are going to work 3 double crochet. So I'm just going to yarn over once, insert my hook back into that same space, grab my yarn, pull it through, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the next 2 loops. So that's 1 double crochet, right? I'm going to work 2 more double crochet into that same space. Alright, this is how our stitches look like so far. Right, now we are going to do the same thing that we did earlier. We are going to skip the next 3 chains. Okay, so if you see carefully, this is where we worked our stitches into last, right? So this space right here. Now we're going to skip the next 3 chains. So 1, 2 and 3, and into this fourth chain we are going to do a slip stitch. Okay, so I'm going to go into this fourth chain here and work a slip stitch like so. Okay, and then I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to work 3 double crochet into this same space right here where we just slip stitched. Okay, so we're going to go back there and work 3 double crochet. So this is basically the repeat pattern for this row. So you're just going to keep doing this all the way till the end. Okay, so this is how my stitches look like so far. So you're just going to repeat that after you've made your 3 double crochet stitches. You're going to skip the next 3 chains. So you're going to skip 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then into the fourth chain space, you're going to work a slip stitch first, like so. Then you're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And then you're going to go back into that same space that we just slip stitched into and work 3 double crochet stitches. So that's basically the repeat pattern. Repeat this all the way till the end of your row 1, and I'll show you how to finish this row. So once you reach the end of row 1, okay, and you've got just 4 chains left on your foundation chain, you're just going to finish this row by working a slip stitch into the last chain. Okay, so you're going to skip 3 chains as we normally did, and then into that last chain space we're just going to work a slip stitch. Okay, and that ends your row 1. Alright, so I'm just going to work a slip stitch into that last chain space like so. Okay, and this finishes our row 1, and this is how your stitches should look like. Okay, so now let's move on to row 2. Now for row 2, you're going to start by making a simple chain 3. So you're just going to start by chaining 3, 1, 2 and 3. Okay, and then you're going to turn your project like so. Okay, and now you just need to identify your gap space. Now this is where things get a little tricky if you don't understand where the gap space is. Okay, so I'll just show it to you. When you see the base of this chain 3 that you made, that's this space right here. When you just separate your stitches, you see this large space opening up, right? So this is your first gap space. Okay, so if you see this particular slanting box, right, the first slanting box here, just beneath that, when you separate the stitches, you get this sort of space here, this large space that opens up. This is your first gap space. So once you identify this gap space, then this pattern actually becomes quite easy, because that is where it gets tricky. Okay, so after you chain 3, first identify your gap space. So this is my first gap space, right, just beneath this slanting box here. Okay, so when you just separate your stitches like this large space opening up. So into this gap space, we are just going to work 3 double crochet stitches. So after chaining 3, I'm just going to yarn over once, insert my hook into that large gap space, and work my double crochet. Okay, so that's 1 double crochet. Going to work 2 more into that same large gap space. That's my second, and then 1 more. Okay, so I worked 3 double crochet into this large gap space right here. Okay, next we have to work our slip stitch. So to work our slip stitch, we are just going to make the slip stitch into this peak over here. So if you see the stitches from your row 1, okay, that first slanting box stitch, you have this peak over here, right? So again, when you separate your stitches, you'll see this space here. Can you see that? This one here, okay, just between your last 2 stitches from this box. This is your slanting box, right? So just at the peak here, you have this space opening up, this gap space here. Okay, just into that gap space, we are going to work our slip stitch. So make sure that you're not working into this chain space here. So don't work in between your chains, rather work into your gap space. So just separate your stitches if it's difficult to identify, and you'll see that larger space opening up, right, the space here. So just work a slip stitch into this particular space. So after we finished our double crochet stitches, I'm just going to insert my hook into that gap space here and work a slip stitch like so. Okay, right? So this is basically the repeat pattern. This is what you'll be doing till the end of row 2. So again, after you worked your slip stitch, you're going to chain 3, 1, 2 and 3, and then into that gap space that we just slip stitched into, so this space right here, right, we're going to work 3 double crochet stitches. So yarn over once, insert your hook into that gap space, work 1 double crochet, go back, work 1 more double crochet, go back and work another double crochet. So I worked 3 double crochets into that gap space. Okay, making sense? Okay, so next we're going to go into the next peak. So this is our slanting box from the row 1, right, from row 1. So you're going to just identify the peak. So that's this one right here. Just separate the stitches and you'll see that gap space opening up, this space right here. Okay, make sure you're not working into the chain spaces. Make sure you're working into gap spaces. So after you finish your double crochet stitches here, go into this gap space right here and work a slip stitch like so. And then you're just going to chain 3, go back into the same gap space and work 3 double crochet. So this is basically your repeat pattern for this row as well. Okay, so just identifying the gap spaces can be a little tricky, so don't give up, just take it slowly and identify your spaces first. So here I finished my 3 double crochet. Right, now moving on to the next slanting box. That's the peak here, right? So I'm just going to separate the stitches here and this is the gap space, this one here. Okay, so into that gap space, just beneath the peak of this box stitch, okay, the slanting box, just here I'm going to work my slip stitch. And then I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, go back into that same gap and work 3 double crochet. So that's 1 double crochet, 2 double crochet, and 3 double crochet. Okay, so just repeat this all the way till the end, and I'll show you how to finish this row. So once you reach the end of your row 2 and you've reached your last box from your row 1, okay, when you reach the last box, what you're going to do is work a slip stitch into that gap space, okay, beneath the peak, right? So again, as we did so far, just identify your gap space first. So this is the peak of my last box, right? This right here. So just beneath that will be my gap space. This is my gap space here. So into that last gap space, we will end this row by just working a slip stitch. Okay, so this is how your row 2 should look like. And if you notice, if in your project, if it's quite long, what happens is when you finish your row 1, your foundation chain might appear a little curved like this, but don't worry, once you work your consecutive rows, when you work row 2, row 3 and row 4, what happens is the base will straighten out. Okay, so if your stitches look like, you know, like this in a curved fashion in row 1, now you'll see when you finished your row 2, they've become a little more straight. Okay, so let's move on to row 3. So for row 3, again, you're just basically going to repeat what we did in row 2. Okay, so that's the basic repeat row. You're just going to repeat this row 2 again and again till you get the height of your project. So I'll just show this to you once more. So after you slip stitch and finished your row 2, you're going to start your next row, your row 3, by chaining 3. So you're just going to go ahead and chain 3, 1, 2 and 3. Okay, and then you're going to turn your project, and the next thing you're going to do is identify your gap space. So if you see the base of this chain 3, that's here, just next to it will be your gap space. So just separate these two stitches, these two boxes, okay, your row 1 box and your row 2 box. Okay, so you'll see this large space opening up. This is your first gap space. So after you chain 3, you're going to go into this wide gap space here and work 3 double crochet stitches. So I'm just going to yarn over, insert my hook into that gap space, work my first double crochet, go back, work my second double crochet and my third double crochet. Okay, so into this wide gap space I worked 3 double crochet stitches. Next, go to the peak of your box. So this is my peak. Just beneath that you'll see this wide space here, right? So into this space I'll be working my slip stitch. So I'm just going to insert my hook directly into that space, grab my yarn, pull it through and pull it through again, right? So that's my slip stitch. Next I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2 and 3. Okay, and then I'm going to go back into this gap space here and work 3 double crochet stitches. So this is basically the repeat pattern. As you can see, it's the same thing that we did in the previous row. So you're just basically going to repeat this all the way around. Okay, so this is my 3 double crochet here. Now again I'm going to do the same thing, identify the peak, identify my gap space, so just separate the stitches. So this space here, I'm going to work my slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochet into that same gap. Okay, identify the next peak, identify my gap space, slip stitch, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, 3 double crochet back into that same gap, and that's basically it. So you're just going to repeat this all the way till you reach the end of row 3. And you're going to end row 3 just as you did end your row 2. Okay, so here I've reached the end as well. Okay, so for my last box here, I'm just going to identify the peak. So this is the peak, right, the last stitch space, and I'm just going to insert my hook into that space here. Okay, into that last stitch, into that last gap space, and work a slip stitch. Okay, so that's basically it. So if you see very carefully, in each row you'll have the same number of boxes. Okay, so this one particular stitch here is the box, right? This is your 1 box, 2 box, 3 box, and my 4th box, right? So for me, since I did a foundation chain of 20, I get 4 boxes. Okay, so in each row you'll see that the number of boxes will be the same. Okay, so you can repeat this row again and again till you get the desired height for your project. Okay, so the basic pattern is the same. Once you reach the end of your project, all you need to do is chain 1. Okay, grab your scissors, leave a little bit of yarn to sew in the ends, cut it off, pull through, tighten your nose, okay, and just sew in your ends. You can also do this in different colors. I have another tutorial where I show you how to change colors for your project, so I will leave the link in the description box below, and this is a very, very pretty stitch to do. So don't forget to sew in your ends, alright? So this is the end of my tutorial, and as you can see, when you finish your last row, the edges will be like so. Okay, it will be sort of like a wavy edge. If you want your edge to be flat, you can try another border. Okay, you can add a border to your project, or you can just work a final row of stitches to sort of straighten out the edge. Okay, makes sense? If you want a tutorial on that, how to make the edges smooth, okay, or to make it flat, let me know in the comment section below, and I would love to film another tutorial for you guys. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Give this video a big thumbs up if you could follow the pattern, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. All you need to do is click on the red button below the video, and if you want to be notified whenever I post a new tutorial, all you need to do is click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button. Okay, just click on the bell icon and you will be notified whenever I post a new tutorial. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in my next tutorial. Bye.